Hi, good people. My name is Godwin. I am a trained psychologist working in the addictions field. I've been working here for close to a decade now. If you are new here, I highly recommend that you check the previous videos. This is video number 3. The other 2 videos, I will leave the links below, either in the description area or in the comment section. If you are coming back, I would like to say you are very much welcome back. These videos have the aim of getting it out there to addicts, to people suffering from addictions, that there is help and that there is treatment. Also to help families to be able to have an avenue where they can reach out to get help for their loved ones who may not be able to access this video. It will also help to be able to get it out there to people that prevention is also possible. We saw how in the previous video we saw how somebody gets from becoming a social drinker all the way to becoming a full-blown addict. And what is becoming apparent is that nobody ever picks up the drink with the aim of becoming an addict. Nobody ever starts gambling with the vision of becoming a gambling addict. They almost always have the notion that it can never be them, only to find themselves there. So the previous videos have had the aim of showing you just how somebody gets to becoming a full-blown addict. And I hope it was very helpful to those who haven't yet gotten there to prevent themselves from getting there, to see just how far they are and where they are going if they do not stop. But if you are already there suffering from an addiction, you have been held captive by the oppressive power that is addiction, then we are now entering into speaking about treatment and interventions on how to get out from the vice grip of addiction, and also giving you an avenue where you can reach out to get help for yourself. I work in a rehab personally, and I am willing to connect you to help and to referrals that are helpful to you, should you choose to reach out. But before we talk about the addiction itself, because today, like I promised in the previous video, we were starting off on speaking about addiction itself and the interventions around addiction. But before we talk about that, I'd like to talk about something very important. Why is it difficult? I start off with a question. Why is it difficult for addicts to admit that they have a problem? Why is it so that everyone else sees that they have a problem except the addict themselves? They just can't seem to come to terms with the fact that their behavior has gotten out of hand. They just can't seem to accept that their behavior has become destructive more than it is helpful. What is this that makes it so? This is what we want to talk about today. And before we start, I'd like to pose another question. And this requires you to become introspective. Think deeply. Think carefully. Have you ever walked up to a loved one or a friend or anyone really and pointed out a negative behavior they have? What was their first reaction? How did they react? Better yet, has someone ever walked up to you and pointed out a negative behavior you have? They critiqued you. What was your first instinct? How did you react off the bat? In many ways, we become defensive when people come to us and tell us about our negative behaviors. In many ways, we try to keep ourselves and to keep them from talking about our negative behaviors, talking about potentially threatening or potentially harmful information. For example, if someone walked up to me and told me, Godwin, I do not like the way you communicate, my first instinct may be to lash out and tell them, oh, you don't like how I communicate? How about this? Don't talk to me. Or I tell them, no, my communication has no problem. It is you who is overly sensitive. So what I've done is that I've lashed out. I have become defensive with the aim of keeping from talking about the real issue, which is the fact that my communication is deficient. And it's completely natural. Nobody ever wants to see themselves less than or deficient or different from. So the first instinct that will come to us when somebody points out the same is that we become defensive. We want to protect our own image, sometimes even to protect our image from ourselves. It's what we call defense mechanisms. These are psychologically called psychological techniques that people use to keep themselves from seeing the painful truth about their own behavior or about their own lives, to keep themselves from seeing and accepting potentially threatening information. And this is what plagues addicts. So even before we talk about the disease of addiction and treatment and interventions, I'd like to talk about this thing that prevents people from seeing that they have the problem. Because how do we talk about solving the problem when the one who has the problem is still convinced that they don't have the problem? They are actually convinced that everyone else has the problem except them. Now, if that is you, I'd like to invite you to become introspective. One of the best qualities that we have as human beings that other species do not have is the ability to remove ourselves from us and to self-examine as if we are looking at a completely different person. So I'd like to invite you to do exactly that. I'd like you to put yourself away from you and to observe yourself as if you are observing somebody else and think deeply. Do you have these things I'm going to talk about today? Are you using these techniques to keep yourself from seeing the truth of the matter concerning your own behavior? Whether it's alcoholism, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's, gambling, whether it's a simple behavior such as, procrastinating or whatever, that may be plaguing you. So what are these defense mechanisms? I'll give 5 examples or so. And from these 5, you will have a reference point where you can, check your own behavior and see whether you have them, or you can get the gist of what they are and see whether you have others that I will not be able to mention in this video. But to start us off, let's talk about the first example of a defense mechanism, and this is aggression. And many people use aggression, especially addicts. You walk up to someone and a loved one and tell them, your drinking has gotten out of hand. And the first thing they do is that they become aggressive. They say, oh, you should focus on your own life, leave my life alone. Or they tell you, oh, I'm drinking, am I drinking your money? Or, oh, why are you focusing on my issues? Don't you have a life yourself? So things like that. So that's their own way of keeping themselves from seeing the painful truth about their own behavior, that their behavior has become destructive more than it is constructive. So it's a potentially threatening information, and it threatens their image, their ego. So their mind automatically shifts to defending themselves. And even though it looks as if they're defending themselves, what they are doing is that they are keeping themselves from seeing the truth of the matter, even when the truth is destroying their own lives. It's like a son who builds a wall around himself. But then the snakes which are out to strike him are inside the wall. So he's building the wall to keep maybe his father from coming into his farm, or to keep his brothers from infringing on his space. But then the walls become a weapon against himself, because what's destroying him is inside the wall. So that's what defense mechanisms are. We build a wall around ourselves to keep people from coming in and seeing how things are, when what's destroying us is already inside. So aggression. I remember over the years I've seen addicts who come home and the first thing they do is that they become aggressive right off the bat. And they learned over the years that when I'm aggressive, nobody holds me accountable to my own behavior. So they come home and they are shouting, and their faces are all, they show aggression all over. And so even if their wife wanted to talk about their negative behavior, they would not. They'd be scared. So they would keep to themselves. The children would keep to themselves. Their mother would keep to herself because of their aggression. So they have defended themselves, but then they have kept from seeing the truth of the matter and changing it to better their own lives. Another example of a defense mechanism would be something like excuses, giving excuses for one's own behavior, and sometimes those excuses look as if they are reasonable, they look plausible. But to be honest, when you look at the thing they are excusing, it's more destructive than the excuses themselves. For example, if you told an alcoholic that your drinking has become a problem, or you told a gambler your gambling has become a problem, they may give excuses as to why they're gambling. For example, a gambler would say, I'm jobless. And if you are jobless too, you would be gambling. So you don't understand. So their excuse for gambling is that they are jobless. And even though it's true that they are jobless, it is also 100% true that their gambling is causing them more financial problems as well. So their excuse may seem true, but 100% also their behavior is destructive. But they are using an excuse to keep from seeing the painful truth that their behavior is destructive. Excuses. Another defense mechanism would be something like sublimation, where you do something overly nice to make up for something overly awful you did maybe in the past. For example, an alcoholic comes in the night and they are rowdy and their behavior is just awful to their families, but then they wake up the next morning and they are overly nice. They want to help out around the home. They want to take the family out for breakfast or for lunch. So they are overly nice. And what they are doing is that they want to make people guilty about talking about their negative behavior the previous night because now they are nice. It's like a man, coming home and becoming awful to his wife, but then the next day making up for it, taking her out, buying her nice stuff. So the wife would feel guilty. She would feel it a little bit hard to talk about his negative behavior because now he's nice. It's a defense mechanism. And it may seem noble, it may seem something positive, but what's happening is that he or she is keeping from seeing the painful truth of the matter that needs to be changed. So they keep on digging the same hole for themselves. Even though they're doing something nice, they will still mess up because they don't see the truth of the matter, that is their behavior is messy, their behavior is destructive. Another defense mechanism, almost same as excuses, is justification and rationalization. Giving plausible excuses as to why you use, justifying your use, justifying your negative behavior. For example, somebody says, if you had a wife like mine, you would drink also. Or somebody saying, if you had a job like mine, you would drink also. Or somebody saying something like, if you had the pain I have, you would drink also. So all these things seem plausible, they seem as if they are sane rationale. But when you look at their behavior that they're rationalizing, you see just how, counterproductive it is. So yes, you have pain, you have past trauma, you are going through emotional pain, and you're using as an excuse to mask your pain. You are rationalizing your use with your pain. But then when you look at the additional pain that your negative behavior is bringing, then the rationale becomes null and void. Think about it. Like I invited you to remove yourself from you and to view yourself as if you're looking at somebody else. Have you been giving excuses for negative behavior? Have you been rationalizing negative behavior? Have you been justifying destructive behaviors that you have? Have you been overly aggressive to keep yourself from seeing and to keep your loved ones from talking about your negative behavior and consequently getting help? Because there's no way we'll talk about interventions and treatments before somebody accepts that they have the problem. The first step is usually to accept, to brutally look at the honest truth so that we move from there and start to talk about intervention and start to talk about treatments. Another defense mechanism would be something like we've spoken about justification, we've spoken about rationalization, we've spoken about aggression, making excuses, intellectualization. I don't think we've spoken about that. There is intellectualization, which means, arguing intellectually for one's behavior to keep from seeing or from experiencing the negative emotions that come with it. So for as long as we are talking about intellectual things, we keep from seeing the truth of the matter, that this thing is destroying me. For example, a marijuana addict, bangi, somebody who's addicted to bangi. When you try to speak to them about the consequences of their own behavior and how bangi is destroying their lives, what some of them usually do is that they start to talk about how bangi has medicinal purposes, how bangi helps them sleep, how it has been proven medically that bangi is, They give you all sorts of intellectual data, intellectual research around banking. And even though to some level those things may be true, they may be supported scientifically, it does not absolve them of the fact that their using has become destructive. I don't I don't deny that in some places cannabis has been prescribed to treat illnesses, or to help with issues like diet or whatever. I don't deny it. But you also should not deny that bangi has become problematic in your own life. These truths are parallel. It is true that some places bangi is used medicinally, but it is also very true that bangi is destroying your life. So away from this fact, there is this fact, and you need to look at this fact. We need to get to a place where we stop defending ourselves and using excuses and justification and intellectualizations to keep ourselves from seeing the painful truth, and consequently from changing it, and bettering our lives, so to speak. Like an alcoholic saying, alcohol runs the economy of the country. So if you think about it, I am an economical hub of the country because I drink. Okay, alcohol, because it's being taxed and because people are buying it left, right, center, it could be economically lucrative to the economy of Kenya. But it is also true that alcohol is destroying your own life. So you see how intellectualization keeps people from seeing the truth of the matter. That's just an example. There could be countless and countless of defense mechanisms, but it is up to you to move beyond them. And if you have been trying to get a loved one to see the truth of the matter and they just can't seem to see it, now you know why they just can't seem to ever see it. Now you know it's called defense mechanisms. And maybe you have a way to maneuver through them and to get your loved one to get help, or also to refer them to this material where they can, come and see for themselves. Some people have to experience rock bottom for them to appreciate that they have a problem. But I don't think that it has to be the case. Your case could be different. My case was different. You don't have to hit rock bottom for you to see you have a problem. These defense mechanisms usually keep people from seeing the truth of the matter until it is too late or too far gone. It's not too late. It's never too late. But these defense mechanisms keep people from seeing the truth of the matter, their negative behavior, and so they keep on doing it until the situation gets desperate or they hit rock bottom. For example, somebody may keep on denying their alcoholism until it gets them jailed, is when they say, hey, it's been a problem. People keep denying their gambling until it gets them homeless, is when they now wake up, oh, it's an issue. I've seen people deny their alcoholism into a wheelchair. I've seen people become aggressive when families try to help them. I've seen them justify their behavior. I've seen them give excuses. I've seen them use intellectualization. I've seen them rationalize their behavior. I've seen them use sublimation until they get to a wheelchair. And that's when they now appreciate that they have a problem. And even then, they still hide behind hate and they hide behind aggression. And it's quite a lot of work to get them to see the reality of things. But it does not have to be so. You can pick the simplest thing and see it for what it is. It could be as simple as the fact that you can't keep money in your pockets. It's become a problem. Your life has become unmanageable. It could be something as simple as you cannot keep friends, you keep losing friends, you keep having interpersonal relationship problems between you and the people that love you. That could be sign enough. You don't have to get into an accident or get incarcerated or get hospitalized for you to see the negative behavior you have. Something as simple as a blackout is enough to show you that you have a problem. And I hope that people who are suffering from addiction get to that point where they see it before it gets to a desperate position. And it's possible. I've seen people come to get help because I work in a rehab. I've seen people come to get help way before it becomes desperate. I've seen people take off in their lucrative positions, people who get six figures for salaries, and they see the problem they have, and they say, you know what, give me 3 months off, let me go and get help. And they come and they get help and they go back to their normal lives. They didn't wait for it to get desperate. But I've also seen people coming to get help when their situation has become desperate. I've seen people come, like I've said, in wheelchairs. I've seen people come with broken families. I've seen people come homeless. For a whole year, I have helped people who have been homeless. I did a whole year of pro bono, just going out there and helping people who are suffering from addictions. They don't have the money, they don't have the resources, they don't even have the family to help them because family left, family chased them away because of their addiction. You know, it gets to a point where family gets tired. And so they're at the rock bottom, and I've been able to help some of them, get back on their feet. And so I've seen both extremes, and I highly recommend the first one, where you see things for what they are before they get worse. Now, hopefully, this video has been helpful to you. If it has, please like, hit the share button, and send it to friends.
And who knows, you may just save a life. Have a good one.